Right, this video is going to go over a couple of tricks that you can use to maybe help make your drawings a little bit nicer for within your presentations. First thing I want to talk about is just hiding elements. Hiding things only hides them in the particular view you're looking at. So for instance, I set up this grid to help me lay out where I wanted all of these structural pieces. If I just don't want the grid in my drawings at all, in my screenshots, I can just right click on one of them and I can do hide and view element, or I can do hide and view category. Element would hide just this single one with the H on it. Category is just going to hide all of the grid pieces. Another important thing to do is if you have a crop region visible here, like I do, I've got this big box here for cropping it, you want to make sure that all of your crop regions are set to hide. So that's this little button down here. You don't want any of these big, ugly, silly boxes coming up in there. And the same thing with when we put our site in our building. My site is showing up in my main level plan. I don't want it here in my main level plan. So I'm just going to right click on it and hide this element or category, I guess in this case. Just because I don't need that visible in this particular view, but I still need it in the project. The next thing that we can do to help jazz up some of our drawings is play around with our graphic display and also play around with our visibility display. So I've mentioned before, but just again to kind of reiterate, your visual style down here for all of your drawings should be set to hidden line. So if you're inconsistent colors at all, go ahead and just set yourself back to hidden line so that this way you are only looking at it in black and white. And additionally, you may or may not want to turn shadows on. So that is this little button down here. If I turn shadows on, sometimes this can help give me a little bit of depth in my drawing. Sometimes shadows are just not going to help what you're looking at. So if you turn shadows on and you don't like how your drawing is looking with shadows, then absolutely do not use them. They're a lot more helpful in the elevations and the sections that we'll look at in a minute. Other ways you can improve some of your visibility is here within your visibility and graphics menu, which is also keyboard shortcut VG. What this is going to do is it's going to open up a menu of how things appear in just this plan. So if I apply it to my level 1, if I have a level 2, it's not going to apply it there into level 2. But essentially, if I just didn't want curtain walls to show up at all, I could just say no curtain panels, and if I hit apply, you see that all of my curtain panels just disappeared. Why would I want that? I don't know. In this case, I definitely do want my curtain walls showing up, but that's one way I could just temporarily get rid of them. Another thing you can also do is halftone things. So in the instance here, I have furniture. If I wanted to check that off, to halftone the furniture so that way it's not as bright. Keep in mind plumbing and kitchen stuff would all be in their own separate folder. I'm going to leave my furniture alone. And the same thing then with floors. As you'll see here for my floor, I've actually applied a pattern to it. So on its surface, I've gone through and said what color do I want that pattern to be. So typically it's going to come in if you have a hatch pattern on that. And it's going to be a lot darker. I don't mind having the pattern here. I think it helps a lot, but that was just way too bright of a gray, so I can apply it to be that. And I can even half tone the floor so that way it's going to be even lighter in there if that's what I'm looking for in my drawing. And the last thing too that I often play around with in here, it's not going to show up incredibly well in this one, but it can really help your drawings show a little bit more, is if you go all the way down to walls, you can see this is also my topography is hidden. If I check it there, my topography would come back, but I'm just too zoomed in, I guess. So this is kind of another way that you can hide things. But within your walls here, so if I do a wall pattern and I override my cut pattern to say that I just want solid fill, and then you can play with the color. Black usually can be a pretty good fit. I just don't have a lot of walls. I have a lot of curtains in here. When I hit apply, you'll see that all of these walls that I set up now are just thick black lines. It's really helpful too with showing the difference between the windows and maybe any of your built-in cabinetry and stuff in there. So this is just one way you can kind of jazz up your floor plans, and we can do the same thing within our section views as well. And that way I can just have a little bit more definition when it comes to like my walls and my features and my pieces like that. Remember too to take a screenshot of something. That is, yes. So that is the either Shift, Windows, the window key, and then S will start the snipping tool, and then you can draw a box around it. I don't know if, hopefully that stays when I'm making my recording, because my screen pauses while I'm doing that. Or you can even hit the print screen key on your keyboard and it'll take a screenshot of the entire Revit, and then you can crop it down for it. With some of our elevations, so I'll go to my south elevation here. Again, I've got to make sure I hide my crop region. Maybe I want to hide all these pieces. If I want to drag some of these in, I can do that for them. Sometimes I'll drag these to just only be kind of over here in the drawing instead of going all the way through. A couple of ways you can improve these drawing styles is if you up your detail level, and you can do this in your floor plan as well, to say a fine amount of detail, because for instance, none of my columns were really coming in otherwise. We can also turn shadows on or off. So I had shadows on already, which was helping improve this drawing a little bit. We can also turn on what are called ambient shadows or dynamic shadows. So if I go into my graphic display options here, or keyboard shortcut GD, we can see that I'm currently in hidden line. And if I go into my shadows, I have shadows turned on, but if I turn on ambient shadows, that usually gives just a little bit more depth to the drawing than what we were seeing before. It doesn't show up as much on this one, but you can see that there's just like a little fade to the stairs, and it would improve this screenshot a little bit as well. I go into, let's do my west one in here because I have those big doors. So again, I have some things that I want to hide in view category. I'll hide this section cut as well. I'll make sure that my crop region is off. Yours should be off by default. I'll maybe pull these all the way over, so I'm just clicking and dragging. But playing around with my shadows, if I go into my graphic display, which is GD, I can turn on just ambient shadows alone, which is going to then give a little bit depth to it, or I could do both ambient shadows and original ones. Now see how like this just becomes this big gray mass? That looks ugly and silly in this view. So I'm going to not have the shadows on this one. Within your sections, so I'll just go back into my main floor plan. To create a section cut, you're just going to use this button here, and then you can choose what you want to cut through. I already have a section cut placed pretty similar to this one, but I've just made another one here, and then it'll make a new area called section 1. I'll make my region a little bit smaller. I'll hide any features that I don't want, and I'll hide my crop region too. So this is just showing my building cut open. And again, to just improve the drawing a little bit, I'm going to put my detail level up to fine, so we just see a little bit more detail to it. I'll turn shadows on. If I don't like how shadows look, I can always then go into my graphic displays, which again is GD, and I can see if I like ambient shadows applied. I kind of don't mind all of the shadows in this one necessarily, but we can also then, like in our visibility settings, so that's VG, or this button here, we can look for like our roof system, or rather let's look at our floor system, and I can override its cut pattern to be a solid fill of black. Okay, and I'll apply it, and now that floor is solid. And then I can go to my roof And I could do the same override of my pattern with my roof. Solid fill, black, apply that, and then go to my walls and say I want a pattern of solid fill, black. So then it's going to make it a little bit more apparent what is my drawing and what isn't. I might turn shadows off in this view just because I don't like too much how those shadows look. And I know it seems silly, but in the Farnsworth house, these walls actually don't go up to the ceiling. So I didn't mismodel those walls. But it just kind of helps the drawing of the section stand out a little bit more when everything has those big pieces to it. Now I'm going to go back into my site plan to just kind of place some cameras as well as my like level 1 or my main floor plan. Something that can also help with some of these 3D perspective views is if you go into massing and site, placing some site components, so placing some trees around the building. I'll usually place some of the larger trees. And I do, for whatever reason, like to hit the space bar as I place some of them. So like I'll place this oak and then I'll hit the space bar, place the other oak. Just because this building is kind of surrounded by trees on a lot of the sides, but I'm not going to sit and place 17 billion trees here in this site. To place a camera, you're going to click on this little arrow underneath, or next to rather, the 3D view button. You'll say I want to put a camera in, and then you can click essentially where you want the person taking the picture standing, move your cursor over what you want them looking at, and then click again. And it's going to create this perspective style camera shot. Things you want to consider then within this shot, again, are your detail level. If you want your detail level set to fine or you want your detail level set to medium, I usually will go with fine for something like this. Again, shadows can be really helpful in these style views just to help show that depth and show that realism. And then finally, my ambient shadows are something I usually like in these views as well. So that is keyboard shortcut VG. Excuse me, that one's GD. Or this button here. And then you can say, I want ambient shadows, and it can really kind of help apply depth to it. Sometimes I'll only do ambient shadows and I won't do the other one for it. If you want to place any views inside your house, that's also totally fine, or really encouraged rather than totally fine. But we're just going to go then to our floor plan, and we're going to click on our little arrow here, say we want to place a camera shot. I'll put this person standing right in front of the table, looking towards this direction. If you're not super pleased with it, you can move this crop region around to maybe look at more than what you were looking at beforehand. And again, things that we want to consider is our detail level. You might see more changes when you change or define. Shadows, whether they're on or off. Make sure you turn that crop region off so you don't see that big box. But that's also something too when you go to take your screenshot that you can sort of help get rid of. And play around with too if maybe ambient shadows. So GD, to my shadows here and say, do I like ambient shadows better in this view? Do I like just plain regular ones? Do I like the combination of the two? I think the combination of the two just makes this room seem really dark. So maybe I'm only just going to do one or the other. You can really play around with some of these features and some of these graphic displays for putting your piece together. And hopefully that helps you while you get your presentation started.